In this striking, colorized image from 1865, a young boy, no older than 12 or 13, leans casually against a massive naval cannon aboard a Union ship. Dressed in a navy blue uniform and sailor's cap, he stares confidently at the camera, his small frame dwarfed by the machinery of war around him. He was a powder monkey, one of the youngest participants in the American Civil War. Powder monkeys were typically boys assigned to warships, responsible for carrying gunpowder from the ship's magazine to the cannons during battle. It was a dangerous job, moving quickly through cramped quarters under fire with the constant risk of explosion. Their youth made them ideal for the task, not for their bravery, but for their size and speed. While the term may sound quaint, the role was anything but. These boys were often exposed to the full brutality of naval warfare, with little protection and no real training, children quite literally on the front lines of America's deadliest conflict. This photo captures a haunting paradox, the innocence of youth set against the machinery of destruction. His slight grin and relaxed pose may suggest confidence, but behind it is the reality of a child pressed into a man's war. Today, this image stands as a powerful reminder of the forgotten soldiers of the Civil War, not just the generals and heroes, but the boys who should have been playing in fields, not carrying gunpowder in the heat of battle. During the 1930s, vast stretches of the American Great Plains, once known as the breadbasket of the nation, were transformed into a desolate, wind-blown wasteland in what came to be known as the Dust Bowl. It wasn't just a drought, it was a man-made ecological disaster, born from a deadly combination of poor farming practices, overplowed soil, and an unforgiving climate. For nearly a decade, high winds ripped across parched fields, lifting millions of tons of loose topsoil into the air. Towering black blizzards of dust swept over homes, choked livestock, blocked out the sun, and buried entire towns beneath layers of fine, suffocating grit. In some areas, people had to sleep in gas masks and seal their windows with wet rags just to breathe indoors. Farmers who once thrived were ruined. Crops failed year after year. Over 2.5 million people fled the Dust Bowl states: Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico, becoming environmental refugees, many heading west to California in search of work and survival. These Okies, as they were often called, inspired books like The Grapes of Wrath, capturing the desperation and dignity of a displaced generation. The Dust Bowl was more than a weather event. It was a lesson, a warning, and ultimately it reshaped American agriculture and land use forever. The government responded with new soil conservation programs and farming reforms to restore the land, but the scars, both physical and emotional, remained long after the dust settled. In one of the more surprising and humanizing images of the 20th century, Albert Einstein, the father of modern physics, the man whose name became shorthand for genius, is seen barefoot and carefree strolling along the beach. Dressed in casual shorts or rolled-up trousers, hair as wild as ever, he looks nothing like the typical professor or the icon etched into textbooks. He looks relaxed, playful, almost whimsical. This photo, believed to be taken in the late 1930s or early 1940s during his time in the United States, shows Einstein enjoying the simple pleasures of coastal life: sun, sand, and solitude. Having fled Nazi Germany in 1933, Einstein settled in Princeton, New Jersey, but frequently visited beach towns like Long Island or Santa Barbara, drawn to their peaceful settings and ocean views. For Einstein, the beach wasn't just a retreat. It was a place to think freely, to walk and ponder, away from lectures, headlines, and equations. He often said that solitude was essential for creativity, and the rhythm of waves may well have mirrored the waves he studied in space-time. The image of him at the beach reminds us, even the most brilliant minds need moments of stillness. It's a portrait of balance, the theoretical physicist grounded in the most elemental force of all, nature. In a scene that feels equal parts absurd and ingenious, a group of soldiers in October 1941 were photographed wearing full gas masks while doing something far less dangerous than warfare: peeling onions. Taken during World War II, this humorous moment from behind the front lines shows how even seasoned military men weren't immune to one of cooking's most notorious enemies: eye-stinging onion vapors. These troops used their standard-issue protective gear not to shield themselves from mustard gas, but from the volatile sulfur compounds released by freshly cut onions. The result? A bizarre but practical blend of military readiness and culinary creativity. It's an image that reminds us war isn't only fought on battlefields. There are mess tents to man, meals to prep, and morale to keep high, and sometimes that means donning gas masks just to get through lunch duty without tears. Whether staged as a joke or a real-life hack, this photo captures the lighter side of wartime life, where ingenuity and humor often marched alongside discipline and duty. Long before he set foot on the moon and uttered the words heard around the world, Neil Armstrong spent countless hours in intense and often dangerous training on Earth. Photos of him during these sessions, wearing bulky spacesuits, balancing on mock lunar surfaces, or climbing into spacecraft simulators, capture not just a man, but a mission in motion. As part of NASA's Apollo program, Armstrong's training was grueling, methodical, and unforgiving. He practiced in zero-gravity aircraft, nicknamed the Vomit Comet, endured simulations of system failures, and navigated the Lunar Landing Training Vehicle, LLTV, a jet-powered craft that mimicked the tricky descent onto the moon's surface. Armstrong once narrowly escaped death when the LLTV malfunctioned in midair, ejecting seconds before it crashed in a fireball. But beyond the hardware and hazard was something quieter: focus. Armstrong was famously calm, analytical, and precise, a test pilot to the core. During geology field trips in the deserts of Arizona and Hawaii, he trained to recognize lunar rocks. Inside spacecraft simulators, he rehearsed every maneuver down to the millisecond. These training moments, sweaty, repetitive, and far from glamorous, were essential. When Armstrong descended the ladder of the Lunar Module Eagle in July 1969, he was doing exactly what he had trained to do, flawlessly. This wasn't just preparation, it was history being built, step by calculated step. On December 21, 1970, the King of Rock and Roll walked into the White House for one of the most unexpected and surreal encounters in American history: Elvis Presley's secret meeting with President Richard Nixon. Dressed in a black velvet suit with a wide collar, oversized belt buckle, and sunglasses, Elvis looked every bit the icon. Nixon, in his gray suit and awkward smile, looked slightly confused. The meeting wasn't scheduled through official channels. Elvis had hand-delivered a 6-page letter to the White House while in Washington, D.C., offering to help combat the nation's growing drug problem. His request: to be made a federal agent at large in the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. What followed was an impromptu meeting in the Oval Office where the two men, one a rock legend, the other the sitting U.S. president, talked about patriotism, the counterculture, drugs, and Elvis's deep concern for America's youth. He even presented Nixon with a Colt .45 pistol as a gift. Secret Service reportedly confiscated it before the meeting. Nixon, in return, gave Elvis an official DEA badge, which the singer cherished for the rest of his life. The photo of them shaking hands, Elvis in full rock star regalia, Nixon in presidential formality, is now the most requested image in the U.S. National Archives. It captures a moment where two wildly different forms of American power, political and cultural, briefly overlapped, and where Elvis, ever the showman, took center stage in the nation's most powerful room. In 1924, a young woman named Ruth Malcolmson was crowned Miss America, becoming the third winner in the pageant's history and a symbol of a rapidly changing America. At just 18 years old, Malcolmson, who entered as Miss Philadelphia, won the title during a time when the competition was evolving from a seaside novelty into a national cultural event. Held in Atlantic City, the Miss America pageant of 1924 was far more than just a beauty contest. It reflected the energy of the Roaring '20s, a decade defined by jazz, flappers, and the newly emerging idea of the modern woman. Young, independent, and fashion-forward, contestants like Malcolmson represented a shift in society's expectations of femininity: poised but bold, elegant yet spirited. Interestingly, Malcolmson had not planned to enter the pageant at all. She was encouraged by friends and ended up defeating over 80 contestants, including the previous year's winner. Her victory was based not only on appearance, but also on personality, poise, and something the judges called feminine appeal, a subjective quality that blurred the line between charm and character. Wearing a modest bathing suit and a sash that would become iconic in later decades, Ruth Malcolmson's win helped solidify the Miss America pageant as a national tradition, one that would both reflect and influence American culture for generations.